Hi, my name is Katie Schiffelbein, and here's the case study over Module 9. So, first thing that I want to do is I want to outline what we actually know about the case study. We know our main characters, so to speak. We have our principal, we have James, we have David. Another key factor into this case study is the police officer. And then, of course, we have our ethical dilemma, where James has convinced David to hold a piece of contraband by bullying him into doing so during the school day. And then both individuals are called into the office, and in the end, both of the young men end up arrested and charged for possession of a weapon on school grounds. And the ethical dilemma falls with our principal on how he is going to handle this situation. So one thing that we need to do is we need to outline the legal and the ethical issues of this case. So we know that we have several legal issues going on here. We know that James threatened David. David was in possession of the contraband, and that possession of a weapon is a felony. Our ethical problems that we have here is the principal only filed discipline against one student. And then they also assumed that everything was James's fault, and they didn't really look very hard into David because of his personal history. So now let's talk about what happened here. So our assistant school principal, Richard Inman, was struggling with the choices of what he knows to be correct based on the letter of the law, which would be to write up both boys and file discipline, and they would both go to an alternative center for 45 days, and what is ethically the right thing to do based on his relationships with both of the students. So David was our honors student, small for his grade, participates in educational activities, never been in trouble before. Parents are very concerned with the issue and how it affects his future. We also have James, who is old for his grade. He comes from a very bad part of town, the south side of town, as they say, same as our principal did. Constantly in trouble and has had to serve several days in the DAEP from previous offenses. Parents are very fed up with James and has accepted the fact that he is at fault for the situation. Our assistant principal, this is his first year on the job, and he wants to try and reach as many students as possible and works to create relationships with students both inside and outside of the classroom. And then we have our police officer, who arrested both of the individuals because it was a felony offense. We know that this takes place at a large high school, or a large junior high, over 900 students in a large metropolitan area, and we know that there is a disciplinary alternate education program with a 45-day sentence at stake for these two boys. So what actually is important out of this case? So things that we really need to take into consideration about this is the well-being of all of the students at stake here. We need to look at both of the boys as equals. They're both young, impressionable children, and what happens here is really going to impact both of their lives. We also know that policies must be followed as it binds together our educational system. And we know, based on this, that there are some holes in the system and that rules need to be revised, especially after this incident. We have both ethical and legal decisions that could lead to backlash and punish future innocent individuals. So we've found these problems through this process. Okay, so what are our choices here? How are we going to handle this situation? We know that option 1 is policy can just be upheld, letter of the law, cut dry to the point, both boys serve their sentence at 45 days at the alternative center. I think that that's a viable option, we could definitely do that. We could also gather with stakeholders to discuss the situation at hand. So we get everybody together, we have a conversation, we really get down to business on what exactly is going on. So we know our principal is just an assistant principal at this big school. Let's get the principal in, let's get maybe some board members in, the superintendent in. Let's really figure out how to handle this situation. We can wait and see what happens, what comes about from parents and all of the parties involved. So how much backlash are parents going to put into this? How much pushback are we going to get to see what kind of a punishment we want to instill in these individuals? We can play the ignorance is bliss card. As we all know, this is never really a good option, but in some circumstances it does work. Not necessarily what we want to do. And then we can always go talk to our school board members and other individuals in administration about similar situations that happened in the past to help us make a more informed decision. So what do we do? So as educators, regardless of rank, we have an absolute moral obligation to protect and advocate for the students that are in our care and what the best interest is for all of them and everyone else involved. That's the reason why we all got into this career. It's what we need to do. We are the advocates for these students. Another thing that I would definitely do would be to help prepare a defense for David, outlining all of the positives leading up to this event. As a non-repeat offender, it should be noted that James has also been making strides in the right direction, and a severe punishment might not help him going forward because he has been on the right track, and our assistant principal has been building a positive relationship with him, and we definitely don't want to ruin that. We don't want to cause any mistrust there. And then present it as a collaborative front. Use other district leaders and community members to advocate for the cause. The principal must understand that it is a moral and ethical obligation that will require a lot of groundwork in preparation to present a case for the students involved, but ultimately this will probably be a benefit for both of the boys. So now let's implement this decision. We need to present information with all of the facts, as much of the facts as possible. We need to choose the right path. And in a perfect world, that would definitely be the path with least resistance. And we also need to present this as it's not just about David or James, but all of the students that could possibly get themselves into this situation in the future. We need to have David present in person and be the voice for the future. Have him speak about how this affected him, and have a solid platform built on research and scenarios, not just beliefs. Providing as much factual data to go off of is definitely going to be how we gear toward getting this problem fixed for the future. And just knowing that every student should be heard and should be able to be heard, that is what our goal needs to be. So what I learned about this and what I learned about this ethics is that it really is a hard thing to do, and it's an uncomfortable thing to do, because as our assistant principal did, he got reprimanded because he wanted to rip up David's disciplinary and throw it in the trash, and it came back and kind of bit him 2 weeks after the fact, when he probably thought all of it was said and done, and then it just brought the problem back to the surface again. So that's why I would choose to put up a defense for these kids, and why I would choose to, as some people would say, buck the system. Because we are the advocates for these kids. They're minors, they're under the age of 18. We're talking junior high children right now. They're not mature enough to 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 fight the fight for themselves. They do need an adult in their corner, even whenever they are actually in trouble. And we have to be the voice for those people. And I think that that was the valuable takeaway from this assignment. Thank you.